Hello everyone, and welcome to Earth Archives. In the early 19th century, Napoleon's ambitions were not limited to the continent. His goals even reached the powerful maritime empire of Britain. Napoleon's plan sounded like something straight out of a movie. He decided to build 1,000 transport ships, each capable of carrying not only 60 soldiers, but also several cannons. The mission of these ships was to transport 6,000 elite warriors and 6,000 war horses to Britain, and then Napoleon could completely conquer the world's most powerful naval nation. However, this grand plan ultimately did not come to fruition. What Napoleon could not foresee was that in 1803, the British Navy took the first step and decided to block France's ports, preventing France from sailing out to sea. This strategy posed a huge obstacle to Napoleon's maritime ambitions. As time went on, the British blockade grew tighter, while Napoleon had no effective countermeasure. The two nations' naval confrontation lasted for 2 years, and the situation became increasingly tense. Finally, in 1805, this prolonged naval standoff reached its climax with the decisive Battle of Trafalgar. This battle was a complete failure for Napoleon. The retreat of the French Navy shattered Napoleon's naval dreams in an instant and solidified Britain's unparalleled dominance at sea. The Battle of Trafalgar marked the end of the naval struggle between France and Britain, and France lost any further opportunity to challenge Britain. France's naval blockade and the new plan. Entering 1804, France found itself in a difficult situation due to the prolonged naval blockade. Resources continuously flowing from North America could no longer be brought back to France, and Napoleon's war machine began to stagnate. This leader, accustomed to controlling the larger picture, grew increasingly anxious and decided to embark on another grand plan, an attack on Britain. This time, he assigned Commander Villeneuve to lead the French fleet out of Toulon and head towards the West Indies. Officially, this mission was meant to strike at British forces in the West Indies, but Napoleon's true aim was to attract the attention of the British fleet. The core of the plan was to create a diversion, making the British fleet believe that France was launching an attack on the West Indies. This way, Napoleon hoped to lure the British fleet away from the mainland and lead them towards the West Indies. Once the British fleet focused on protecting the West Indies, the French fleet would quickly turn around and head straight for the British homeland. In this way, Britain's defenses would be thrown into chaos, and Napoleon could seize the opportunity to launch an attack, further weakening Britain's naval power. Theoretically, this plan was undoubtedly brilliant, and if Napoleon had personally commanded it, the chances of success would have been very high. However, this time, Napoleon was unable to personally command the naval confrontation due to the pressing matters at home that required his attention. Villeneuve was appointed as the commander for the mission, but he was not an experienced naval officer. In such a decisive war, Villeneuve's leadership skills naturally could not compare to Napoleon's. His opponent, the British Navy's Mediterranean Fleet commander, Horatio Nelson, was undoubtedly a formidable adversary. Nelson was a highly experienced and exceptional naval leader, whose strategies often turned the tide at critical moments. The clash between Villeneuve's fleet and Nelson's fleet would be a fierce and balanced contest, one that would ultimately alter the balance of naval power between the two nations. Napoleon's plan was carefully crafted, but whether it would come to fruition depended on whether he could successfully mobilize his commanders and overcome unforeseen challenges and variables. In naval battles, even the slightest mistake can decide the entire outcome, and this time, Villeneuve's command abilities would face unprecedented challenges. Horatio Nelson, the genius of naval warfare. Nelson, this legendary figure of the seas, was undoubtedly a formidable adversary for the French forces. His naval career was nothing short of brilliant and full of legendary moments. At just 20 years old, he was promoted to captain and quickly made a name for himself during the American Revolutionary War, displaying exceptional command skills. As the French Revolution erupted, Nelson continued to fight against French forces, and in the Battle of the Nile in 1798, he shone brightly, defeating the powerful French fleet and earning eternal fame for the British Navy. By 1801, he had successfully commanded British forces to victory at the Battle of Copenhagen, further solidifying his position as a key figure in the Royal Navy. By 1805, Nelson's experience and leadership abilities were at their peak, making him the most reliable force in the British Navy. However, compared to the strength of this naval hero, Villeneuve's plan did not go smoothly. Once the French fleet set sail from Toulon, Nelson quickly detected their movements and immediately began pursuing them. Villeneuve had intended to swiftly pass through the Strait of Gibraltar and launch a surprise attack on the British homeland, but fate was not on his side. At that moment, an unprecedented storm struck the Mediterranean, crippling the French fleet's sailing plans and forcing them to retreat back to Toulon. However, Nelson's indomitable spirit did not stop there. He continued to pursue the French, even following them all the way to Egypt. This arduous pursuit journey demonstrated Nelson's extraordinary perseverance and determination. Not only did he rely on his exceptional navigation skills, but he also used his strong ability to predict and search for the French fleet's whereabouts in every corner of the Mediterranean. Despite all his efforts, Nelson was still unable to locate the true position of the French forces. It wasn't until later that Nelson finally received accurate information, learning that the French fleet had quietly returned to Toulon and was planning to continue its journey. This news undoubtedly made Nelson even more vigilant and quickened his pursuit. This reaction embodied Nelson's unwavering determination and fearless attitude towards battle, and it was through these countless challenging confrontations that his reputation was built. The final battle, the Battle of Trafalgar. In 1805, French naval commander Villeneuve set sail once again, this time leading his fleet through the British naval blockade and successfully entering the Atlantic. This action demonstrated the determination and courage of the French forces, especially after Villeneuve had faced numerous setbacks. This successful breakthrough was undoubtedly a significant victory. However, Nelson quickly learned of the French fleet's movements and immediately led the British fleet westward in pursuit. Yet, fate seemed to always be against Napoleon at the most critical moments. As the British fleet approached the Strait of Gibraltar, an unexpected headwind prevented them from passing through, putting the British fleet at a disadvantage. Nelson had no choice but to stop and wait for the wind to shift, resulting in the French fleet pulling ahead by a full 2 weeks. During this time, Villeneuve was able to lead his fleet away from the British pursuit, preventing the British from catching up as quickly as expected. However, despite this, the speed and determination of the British fleet remained unmatched. After the 2-week delay, Villeneuve gradually realized he was unable to compete with the experienced and powerful Nelson. He decided to abandon his original plan and lead his fleet in retreat, seeking other opportunities. Villeneuve's retreat was a significant setback for the French, not only eliminating the chance to continue fighting the British, but also opening the door for a British counterattack. Nelson, however, was not discouraged by this delay. Instead, driven by his own perseverance and resolve, he quickly returned to Gibraltar for resupply, preparing for the final showdown with the French. This battle would go down in history as one of the most famous naval engagements, the Battle of Trafalgar. Heroes and tragedy in naval warfare. On October 21, 1805, the British Navy faced off against the combined French and Spanish fleets in a decisive battle at Cape Trafalgar, Spain. The scale of the battle was massive, with the French and Spanish fleets numbering 33 ships, while the British had only 28, putting them at a numerical disadvantage. Despite this challenge, British Admiral Horatio Nelson did not hesitate, but instead chose an aggressive strategy. He cleverly divided his fleet into 2 groups, launching fierce attacks from both sides of the enemy, effectively surrounding them. The battle was intense, but in the end, the British, with their superior tactics and leadership, successfully defeated the numerically superior enemy. The combined French and Spanish fleets suffered devastating losses, with 19 ships sunk and 4 more captured. This was a catastrophic blow for France and Spain. In contrast, the British losses were relatively minor, and the outcome of the battle was undoubtedly a resounding victory for the British Navy. However, although Nelson led the British to a tremendous victory, he paid the ultimate price for it. While attacking fiercely aboard his flagship, Victory, Nelson was tragically struck by an enemy bullet. Despite his injury, he continued to command his fleet, but as his condition worsened, he was unable to continue. In his final moments, Nelson smiled as he gazed up at the sky, seemingly feeling that he had completed his mission for the British Navy. Soon after, he closed his eyes, and Britain lost a great leader and tactical genius. Although Nelson lost his life on the battlefield, his heroic deeds were forever etched in the hearts of the people. The victory at the Battle of Trafalgar solidified British naval supremacy and ensured Britain's dominance of the seas for decades to come. Nelson became a national hero, and his courage, wisdom, and spirit of sacrifice continue to inspire countless people to this day. The fall of a hero and the turning point in history. Nelson's death was undoubtedly an irreplaceable loss for Britain. The sacrifice of this naval hero meant the loss of his unparalleled command ability and tactical brilliance. However, despite this, the victory he secured at the Battle of Trafalgar established Britain's undisputed naval supremacy. This battle not only destroyed the French and Spanish combined fleets, but also marked the end of Napoleon's dream of conquering Britain. The French naval power was severely weakened, and Britain successfully maintained control over the Atlantic and global seas, which was crucial for the later establishment of the British colonial empire. On the other hand, French fleet commander Villeneuve faced immense pressure after the battle. Although his performance during the naval engagement was far from perfect, his responsibilities cannot be overlooked. However, Napoleon gradually lost trust in him and sidelined him. Villeneuve's failure, coupled with his isolation after the battle, led him into deep despair, and he ultimately chose to end his life in 1806. His death symbolized the collapse of Napoleon's once ambitious naval conquest plan. This decisive battle was not just a military victory or defeat. It was more like a turning point in history, rewriting the balance of naval power and changing the future of all of Europe. The Battle of Trafalgar solidified Britain's navy as an unbeatable force, laying the foundation for Britain's global hegemony. Nelson's heroic deeds became one of the brightest chapters in British history. His name will forever be linked to this victory, and his legacy will be remembered for generations. Just like every hero in history, regardless of victory or defeat, their names will shine through the passage of time. If you have any thoughts or questions about the Battle of Trafalgar, feel free to leave a comment below and share your insights with us. Let's discuss and explore this topic together. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more interesting content. See you in the next episode.